In this video, I'm going to go over the var preprocessor macro, how to use it, and why you might want to use it. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Start with a blank slate here. So the var preprocessor macro takes two arguments. The first one is the variable name. We'll go with x. And then the second argument is the value for that name. We'll go with 1. So that's great, nice and easy. So now we've got this variable x. How do we actually use it? Well, we'll define a key chord here, and we'll make it right. And the way we use this this variable is through interpolation. So we've got other identifiers like index or description, but after we've defined x as a variable, we can now interpolate x. So if I go ahead and run this file and I press A, we get 1 as our output. And so that's awesome. We can now define variables, give them values, and use them throughout our key chord files, our WKS files, which is really cool. The other way we can use them outside of key chords is through other preprocessor macros. So you can also, for example, let's say we want to define our shell, we can define it with x. And if we take this out here, so it's not writing anymore, and we'll just leave this blank just to see what happens. And if we run this, we press A. Well, actually, no command got ran, so let's do this. Echo, whatever, doesn't matter. And we press A. Error, failed to spawn command 1-c echo. So it did fail to actually, use 1 as a shell because it's not a valid, 1 isn't a valid shell. So aside from that, you can see that you can define, variables and use them throughout your key chord files, and really make your configuration quite modular. This is very powerful, in my opinion. One thing to note is, because these are preprocessor macros, you can define var before it is used. For example, you can define it, and let's delete shell for right now. You can define it so it looks like it's being defined after A, but because of the pipeline for how a WKS file is processed, this is actually processed before the key chords are processed. So you actually will not get an error here. Why is it doing that? One command not found. Yeah. So if I bring back right, it echoes 1, or it writes out 1. So that's got to do with the processing. However, at the preprocessor level, you do need to define the variable before it is used if you're using it, for example, in other preprocessor macros. So this will work because this gets x gets defined here, and then it's used here, but this will not work. We'll get an error. Error at x, undefined variable x in macro argument, blah, blah, blah. So that's the one place where order does matter. It's probably best to just assume you have to define it before you use it, best practice and whatnot. So this is really cool, and just to give you a practical example of how you can use this, if say you just have one configuration file, you may think, oh, this isn't really that great. Why exactly would I need this? Well, it really helps if you've got, say, one thing that you want to make sort of, more generic. Let's say we want to define term as an interpolation, and we want to make that terminal, let's say kitty. Then we can have a bunch of key chords where instead of writing, for example, kitty dash, what is it, E, I think, H top, and NCM PC PP or whatever that disgusting name is called, and I don't mean that like it's a disgusting program or something like that. It's just a terrible name to write out, or NSX IVNSX and Neo Simple X Image Viewer. Yeah, NSX IV. You can repeat kitty here throughout, and that's fine. If you always use kitty, go for it. But maybe there'll come a time where you want to use a different terminal. Instead, we can just use term here, and we go ahead and run this. We'll give these some valid names now. HTOP, music, and image viewer. And so HTOP, kitty HTOP, beam, and cool. Maybe we'll give these some real value key chords. So that's cool. But yeah, let's say, okay, I want to try out foot. Change the term to foot, HTOP. Now we're running through foot. It might be, this does work because, foot and other terminals should take a -E flag, even if it's a no-op and it doesn't actually do anything. I believe that's the standard. You might have to consult your terminal of choice for that. You could even omit it entirely and just include it or not include it here. Whatever you prefer, whatever makes the most sense and actually works for you. But the point is the same. You can have many instances of kitty or foot or ST, Xterm, whatever terminal you normally use. You can abstract that and make it a value you can tweak and change in your configuration. And you only have to tweak it in one place. You don't have to tweak it all over the file, which is really awesome. Same thing for the music player. So yeah, maybe you're into NCM PC PP right now, but maybe you want to use, I don't know, there's probably a bunch of other 2E music players. You can change it so you've got var 2E music, and for at one point you like NCM PC PP, and maybe you change it to some other thing. You're just using that one in one place, so maybe that's a little less useful. But if you actually just run that command and you've got some way to like control your music player or something like that through the command itself, then that might make more sense to abstract. But the main idea is that you're not going to have to go over and make a ton of changes when you want to change your configuration. It makes it easier for you to test stuff out and be a little bit more experimental with your key chords. So that's really cool. That's just for a single file. Another example, and what the documentation actually shows is is part of a more abstract example. So let's consider I've got not just on the level of programs that I want to make modular and configurable. I've got different environments that I'm running WK on. It's DWM, Hyperland, Sway, whatever. I'm using different environments for WK. There's different commands and different ways to do things. Like, for example, switching to different workspaces. You're going to do that differently on those different environments. Well, I don't really want to manage a ton of files with a lot of similar behavior, that is really just a difference in which command I'm using initially. So what I can do is actually have an even higher level of abstraction. And I can do this with really just 2 files, but if you've got different environments, you're probably going to end up with 3. So let's sketch this out. We've got, let's imagine a common .wks file where we've got sort of the template. And this file has, and I should probably spell template correctly. So this file has like the template for how to do things that you want to do no matter what environment you're in. And then you've got x11.wks, and this is the implementation. And that's going to tell us, how we want to do something in a specific environment. And similarly, we'll have a Wayland.wks, which is also an implementation file. So what we can then do is I'm going to copy some of this configuration, and I'm going to create common.wks. And no matter what environment I'm in, I'm going to want my same font. I'm going to want my same font, title font, my same delay. So that's all common, but I also have common behaviors. So one of those common behaviors may be to move workspaces. So we'll do this, or maybe make it a little more explicit. Let's do ABC. And we'll say switch to index +1. We're switching to a different workspace. We're just going to write this out for now. And okay, so this is a template, so we don't really know how to actually switch to a workspace. So let's just imagine there's a workspace command that we want to use to switch to the workspace we've selected. And that workspace command should take in a workspace index that's got a 0, that's a 0-based index. So this is cool. But if we try to run it, common.wks, well, we're going to get errors because, hey, workspace command isn't defined. We don't actually know how to do that. We don't know what you want to do. But that's okay. That's okay. If we then create our x11.wks file, this is where we can implement the workspace command, where we can define it, really. So we can do var and workspace command. And this is x11, so let's say we switch workplaces with xdotool. And let's pretend there's a switch workspace argument to xdotool that exists, and it takes a 0-based index. I don't know that that's true, but let's just pretend for right now. And so I've defined that command now, and so now I can include common.wks, and then instead of running common.wks, I can run x11 as my entry point. And so now I actually get key chords, and if I say press A, xdotool switch workspace 0. So that's super powerful, right? And now I can define for Wayland.wks. I can do the same thing, var workspace command, and let's say, it's Wayland, we want to be general. Let's say it's ydotool. And let's say it's got a switch workspace subcommand as well. And then we can include common.wks, and then if we run that instead of x11 and we do A, we get now yDoTool instead of xDoTool. So this is really awesome in my opinion. We've got this one common file or files where we've got these behaviors that we want across systems. We don't know exactly how we want to do, how we want to actually achieve that, but we know we want it. And then we leave it up to the entry point or some other file to tell us, how to actually do that thing, to define that behavior for us. And then there you go. You've got a very modular system. And this also works for even at a higher level. What we can do is, we've got Wayland, but we can also have hyperland.wks. We can be more specific over, yDoTool and whatnot. So this can become very powerful very fast. And whether you're just configuring your single file, you just want to make that more modular, more hackable, you can do it that way. Whether you've got a lot of machines where you're, running WK on, where you want to take the same behavior, the same, muscle memory across machines and have it just work, you can do it this way too. So this is, in my opinion, one of the best things that is added with version 0.2.0. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you found the video useful. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and bye-bye.